Forum 18 news service, which has followed Turkey and a lot of other countries when it comes to freedom of religion or belief for a long time. So I'm very happy that he could stand in for Mine and do the presentation, mostly based on the latest monitoring report on our project, Freedom of Religion or Belief in Turkey. Please, John.
Thank you. I must say I am a very inadequate female Turkish human rights defender. But there is in the English language a saying, beware of cheap imitations. So I hope that the cheapness of this imitation will not be so very obvious. So I think Metin has set for us a really good context within which looking at freedom of religion or belief happens. Because one of the things we see about human rights is that they truly are universal, indivisible, interdependent and interrelated, as the Vienna Plan of Action says. Freedom of religion or belief intersects with, among other rights, the freedoms of expression, association, the right to education, the right to property, and so on. Every person and group, as Metin indicated, not only those we think of as minorities, is affected, including atheists, agnostics, Muslims, Jews, Armenian Apostolic, Greek Orthodox, Syriac Orthodox, Catholics, Protestants, Baha'is, Jehovah's Witnesses, and others. In other words, when we consider all the human rights of everyone, we expand our possibilities of understanding the situation and of helping changing it for the better. So, the monitoring report that we consider now was published in November by the Norwegian Helsinki Committee Freedom of Belief Initiative and was written by Dr. Mine Yildirim, who's the head of the project. Like the previous reports, it followed extensive consultation with Turkish belief groups and human rights defenders. You'll notice when you read the report that there are concrete recommendations for the Turkish government. Sometimes, when we hear Turkish officials speak, they can kind of suggest that such concerns are really the province of foreigners, Norwegians, Irish people like me. Yeah? But we must consider that, as Metin indicated, there are no foreigners when it comes to human rights. And we can see this because in the report the recommendations are from Turkish human rights defenders, from Turkish belief groups, made with Mine, and I will hope that none of us see any difficulty in being fully in agreement with the recommendations. And we should remember this when we hear Turkish officials speak about this situation. There is also a need, which I think we also see in Metin's presentation, for what the last monitoring report, not the present one, described as the need for a principled approach. It's very welcome, as the introduction to this seminar indicated, that the Turkish Ministry of Foreign Affairs has restated that Europe is our common home and that we have united around common norms, principles and values, and that development of democracy and human rights are among the most fundamental dynamics of Turkey's EU policy. So, this question must be asked. What does this mean if it does not include the rule of law and the implementation of international human rights standards? As each one of the 3 monitoring reports the project has published to date note, in breach of Article 90 of Turkey's constitution, political bodies and courts do not always implement Turkey's international human rights obligations. So, we need that principled approach to human rights implementation. not as a negotiating point, but as a value in itself. The other point I'd like, before I move on to the highlights from the report, is that human beings have an absolutely incurable, and I would say rather wonderful, urge to meet together, to act on their basis of very diverse convictions in very diverse ways. Even when, as in many countries, sadly, increasingly these days including Turkey, there is harsh state repression. Yet in Turkey, no belief community has ever had an independent legal existence as themselves. So they cannot, as themselves, conduct legal proceedings, open bank accounts, buy property, make contracts, and so on. Just imagine the difficulties our organizations would face in doing their work if they faced this problem. At the November 2015 launch of the OSCE Council of Europe guidelines on the legal personality of religion or belief communities, hosted by the project, Turkish voices, including secular academics, repeatedly stressed that legal personality is essential to recognize and to safeguard the pluralism that is Turkey's reality. As the European Court of Human Rights has put it, the autonomous existence of religion or belief communities is indispensable for pluralism in a democratic society. Now, achieving the possibility of legal personality for all would not solve all problems. But the changes in both the law of official and social attitudes would be a powerful tool to address other problems. What is lacking to solve this and other human rights problems as we see is political will. So to the report. Many old and new problems still await solution. For years, including recent attempts to draft a constitution, many, including regional or belief groups, have called for permanent solutions to be found in a participatory and inclusive way. These problems include mandatory and discriminatory courses in religious culture and knowledge of ethics for school children, failure to fully recognize the right of conscientious objection to compulsory military service, a space for religion on national identity cards, failure to recognize cemevis as places of worship, which has significant implications not only for cost and tax, but also because if you gather for worship in a building that is not legally recognized as a place of worship, you are under Turkish law open to prosecution. There is also the state's general lack of impartiality when it comes to beliefs, including atheism. Judgments of the European Court with respect to freedom of religion or belief, and of course other human rights, are not carried out, as the monitoring report documents. These issues and others continue to be the subject of appeals. Some positive changes have been made. For example, the 2011 change to the law on foundations, allowing the return of some, but not all, previously confiscated property, and this of course should continue. But no property has been returned to Alevis and Catholics, and we see that in 2012, for example, the land and property of Izmir's Santa Maria Church was confiscated and transferred to the state treasury. Because the church does not have legal personality, it couldn't prove its ownership. Further measures that are necessary include the immediate adoption of a new regulation on the election of board members of community foundations, as no such elections have been permitted by the state since February 2013. In relation to the intersection between freedom of religious belief and freedom of expression, Article 216(3) of the Criminal Code criminalizes, I quote, the denigration of the religious values of a certain group of the society where this act is conducive to disrupt public peace. Now, I think the lawyers amongst us will be able to see that that wording is, shall we say, unclear. Okay? And this is left to the judiciary to interpret and to apply. So far, funnily enough, Article 2163 has only been used against atheists. The Association for Atheism is the first atheist NGO to be founded in a country with a majority of Muslims. In early 2015, its website was one of the thousands of websites that Meeting pointed out that was shut down after there was a criminal court verdict that it had violated the law. The verdict didn't say what part of the website violated the law, it just said it's a violation. There are 7 ongoing trials against the chair, members or supporters of this association. But of the 4 legal complaints made by the association itself, 2 were rejected as having no basis, and 2 are the subject of ongoing preliminary investigation. This and hate speech, which the authorities do not adequately address, and contributed to the 2007 murders of Harandink and the 3 Christians in Malatya, sends a message. The message is that the authorities will only protect the beliefs of the majority, and we must remember that in international human rights law, beliefs are not protected, and strongly encourages people to censor themselves. Yet again, we must remember under international human rights, people and their rights are protected. In relation to education, many changes have been made to the education system. In 2012 and 13, there are changes that demand a comprehensive analysis, which the project is currently working on. These changes and other long-standing problems have featured in all 3 of the project's monitoring reports. In relation to the long-standing compulsory religious culture and knowledge of ethics classes, for which European Court judgments from 2007-14 have not been implemented, even though the court described them as a matter of urgency, well, obviously nobody's reading what the dictionary says in relation to what urgency means here. Then no changes have been made. There are also problems in that children who manage to gain exemption, and in terms of the harassment involved risk exemption, then they are disadvantaged when it comes to transition exam to high school because they don't have the credits that go with participation in the classes. From 2013-14, the same examination has also opened the possibility for students to be automatically placed, against their wishes, in Imam Khatib, Islamic religious training schools, against their and their parents' or guardians' wishes. There are also problems of state impartiality in relation to the new optional religion classes in the Quran, Islam and the life of the Prophet Muhammad, which many have found are not actually optional classes in reality. Schools don't create an atmosphere for the pluralism of religion or beliefs, which is Turkey's reality and which should be respected. There's still, on this, as in many other human rights questions, a long way to go. The need for sweeping reforms to solve Turkey's old and new problems of human rights is clear. Unless such reforms happen, the restrictions, the discrimination, the repression will continue to flourish instead of the pluralism and democracy that is so urgently needed for social stability and to resolve the complex problems that Turkey faces today. So,